right, are y'all ready to get started? We're on chapter 5, remember? And it's called The Farm. Mr. Sharif turned around and shouted, "Come here, Rambler!" A moment later, a pickup truck automatically rolled out from the garage. The truck pulled up to the man and the robot. Its doors opened wide, and they both climbed in. Rambler had a steering wheel, but Mr. Sharif sat in the back and let the truck drive itself. They followed the driveway behind the house, across the backyard, past trees and hedges, and suddenly they were surrounded by farm buildings. The buildings were different sizes and shapes, all white walls and gray roofs, and they were so tightly packed together you could hardly tell where one building ended and the next began. Some were spattered with mud and others had holes and loose boards. The entire place smelled like grass and manure. There's the farm buildings. "Let's go home," said Mr. Sharif. Rambler started his engine and he drove back up the long driveway. By the time they reached the farm buildings, a steady rain was falling and the cows were in the barn. "This is for you," said Mr. Sharif, and he handed Roz her own computer. "That controls the farm equipment and it's got all the information you'll need to work here. Do you know how to use a computer?" "Yes, I know how to use a computer." Roz had never used a computer before, but she instinctively knew what to do. Clearly, the robot was designed to work with technology. "Study up tonight and start farming tomorrow," said Mr. Sharif. "You can stay in the machine shed with the other machines." "Perhaps I should stay in the barn with the cows," said Roz. "My whole world now revolves around them." The man smirked and said, "I like the way you think." Chapter 6, The Monster. The cows were munching hay in their stalls when the big barn door slid open and a mechanical monster stomped in from the rain. The creature marched down the center of the aisle, her footsteps echoing through the space until she found an empty corner. And there she stood in the shadows as a storm began to rage outside. Everyone listened as the rain poured and the winds howled and the thunder cracked. By midnight, the storm had blown over and there was only a gentle sprinkling on the roof. But the herd couldn't rest with that monster lurking in the corner. Cows began quietly mooing to each other. "What is that monster doing? She hasn't moved in hours. I bet she's waiting to eat us in our sleep." The cows gasped at this horrible thought, and then an old cow named Annabelle tried to calm down the herd. "Relax, everyone," she said. "There were monsters like this at my last farm, and they never ate any cows. Come to think of it, they never ate anything at all." "If this monster has never eaten anything at all, she must be awful hungry by now," said a cow named Tess. "I saw Farmer driving the monster around in his truck," said a calf named Lily. "I don't think he would have done that if she were dangerous." Nobody knew quite what to think of this strange creature in their midst. "I think the monster is harmless." "I think the monster is unnatural." "I think the monster is moving." The herd fell silent as the monster marched out from the shadows and into the middle of the barn. And then the monster did the impossible. She did the unthinkable. She spoke to the cows in the language of the animals. "I am not a monster. I am a robot. My name is Roz." Chapter 7, The Robot's Story. None of the cows could believe that this monster, this robot, this machine had just spoken to them in animal language. They stared at her, nervously shifting in their stalls, wondering what she would do next. What Roz did next was simple. She told the truth. She stood in the middle of the barn and shared her story with the herd. "I spent my first year of life on a remote, wild island, Roz began. She does remember, y'all. I did not know how I got there. I only knew that I wanted to survive. So I studied the island animals to see how they survived. And a surprising thing happened. Their sounds and movements started making sense to me. I was learning the language of the animals. Even when I could speak to them, the animals wanted nothing to do with me. But that changed when I discovered an orphan gosling. The poor little thing would have died on its own, so I cared for him and adopted him as my son. His name is Brightbill. A murmur spread through the herd. When the animals saw me caring for Brightbill, they finally accepted me. I was no longer alone. I had friends and a family and a home. Life was good. Until the Recco robots arrived. They came in their sleek white airship to take me away. And when I resisted, they became violent. The animals defended me. They fought bravely and destroyed the Reccos. But I was badly damaged in the fight. I needed repairs and I could not get them on the island, so the animals loaded my broken body into the airship and took me far away from my home. Lily the calf poked her head through the railing and said, "What about Brightbill?" "My son is smart and tough, and he has a good flock," said Roz. "I think he will be okay without me." "Where were you taken?" said Tess. "I was taken back to the factory where I was made. The factory is run by a crew of robot workers called the Makers. When I arrived, they put me in a room filled with other broken robots. Some robots were completely ruined." So here she is. She's talking about being with Brightbill. And then here's the Makers carrying her and getting ready to put her back together. Are y'all as excited as I am that she remembers her life on the island, that they didn't reset her memory? And she remembers her son. That's so sweet. The Makers immediately sent them away, but those of us with working computer brains were given a test. "What kind of test?" said Lily. The Makers simply asked us questions. They asked us how we had become damaged. They asked us how we would respond to different emergencies. They asked us to identify certain sounds and smells and objects. Robots who answered every question correctly were repaired. All others were destroyed. In the wilderness, I camouflaged my body to survive. In the robot factory, I camouflaged my personality to survive. I pretended to be perfectly normal robot. I did not say that I had adopted a goose, or that I could speak with animals, or that I resisted the Reccos. I said what I had to say to pass the test, and it worked. "Good for you, Roz," shouted Tess, and the other cow smiled. The Makers shut me off, and when I awoke, my body was fixed, and I was on this farm. Now, like all of you, I belong to Mr. Sarif. The cow stopped smiling. Everyone was quiet. And then old Annabelle spoke up. "I was taken from my friends and family too," she said. "They're back on the farm where I was born. I still think about them every day." "It is difficult to be apart from our loved ones," said the robot. "You know, Roz, things could be worse," said Tess. "At least on this farm you're still surrounded by nature." "Yes, things could be worse." The robot's eyes brightened a little. "But I am not safe here. If any human ever learns who I really am, they will have me destroyed. And that is why, when the time is right, I will try to escape." Chapter 8, The Computer. Inside the barn, the lights were low, the sounds were hushed, and the night slowly wore on. A few cows were chewing hay, but most were resting peacefully. Our robot had returned to her corner. The soft glow of the computer screen lit her face as she studied the farm. She learned about the herd, about the pasture, about the fields, about the native plants and wildlife, about the seasons and climate and weather, about the machines and buildings and fences and tools and all the dairy equipment. Every detail was perfectly remembered in the robot's computer brain. And in a single night, Roz became a farmer. We're going to stop there and we will start up with chapter 9. Hope you guys are enjoying it. I just am so excited that she has her brain. She's already planning on making her big escape. So we have 90 chapters in this book. So I can't wait to see what happens in all of them. We'll start chapter 9 tomorrow. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.